Are you ready to get your mind right for the day? This is the Morning Mindset, and I'm Kerry Green, and I don't say that phrase of get your mind right, implying that you're a loon or anything. I'm just saying that we each struggle every day to think rightly, to have ourselves aligned with the truth, and specifically the truth of God as He represents it. And so the Morning Mindset is my attempt to help my brothers and my sisters in Christ know just some of the ways they can go about getting their mind aligned with the truth of God. We've been doing that most recently by looking at the book of Exodus and the life of Moses. And today I want to talk to you some about a phenomenon that we Christians get into at times that I call Sunday school sanitizing. And what I mean by that is that we read biblical accounts and we kind of skim over them, not taking to heart or taking seriously the details of what are described. Now, sometimes that's just because we're in a hurry and we want to get done with our reading so we can get on with our day, which I would submit indicates there's a deeper problem in terms of your understanding what that time of reading is really all about. It shouldn't be about rushing through. It should be about gaining something that can enable you to live a better day in God's sight that day. But nevertheless, that could be one reason that we do it. Another reason could be because the passage has some hard things in it that are difficult to understand and even reconcile with what we think we know about God. And so we just kind of skim it and we don't look deeply into the circumstances. And I think that second reason is one that applies to the section of Exodus that we've been looking at, which is where God brings the plagues, the judgments on Egypt. Now, if we take the time to think through what it really would have been like to be a person who experienced these 10 plagues back to 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 back, we'd see this was a devastating event in the life of the nation of Israel. And we would also see that God is the one who did it. God did this. He did these horrible, terrible things to real people back in the history of the land of Egypt. And we can walk through these plagues, and just as I mention them, you will get a feeling for what I'm talking about. The very first plague was turning the Nile River and all the water in the land to blood for 7 days duration. The next was a plague of frogs that were in the houses, in the food, in the streets, in their yards. If they had yards in Egypt, everywhere they go, there are frogs. The next was a plague, after the frogs left, was a plague of gnats. When you've been camping and a gnat gets in your ear. It's such an irritation. Well, they were everywhere. Then a plague of flies, dirty, nasty, buzzing flies. Then all the livestock dies. Then everyone in the land breaks out with boils. And then there's hail that destroys all the crops. Are you getting the feeling here of what's going on? There's a plague of locusts that comes in and eats up everything else that's left. Then there's a plague of darkness for 3 days. And then, the worst of them, the death of the firstborn in every household in Egypt. These are things God brought on the people of Egypt. And He spared His people in every instance. And we need to reconcile ourselves with the fact that our God is mighty and He does mighty things, sometimes against people. And it's because He has a purpose that is bigger than what we see. And in our own lives, we experience terrible things that God could prevent, but He doesn't. And why is that? We've talked about it on some previous episodes, but I want to dig into it a little more deeply tomorrow and talk about some of the reasons that we find those things hard to accept. So I hope you'll join me tomorrow as we dig into another edition of the Live, Build, Change Morning Mindset.